The antique porch lantern shattered, sending glass shards exploding outward. Karen's eyes widened in horror, realizing too late this wasn't some cheap decoration. It was a rare historical artifact, donated to the town's museum decades ago. Heart racing, she watched the curator's face turn to fury, knowing her thoughtless actions just triggered a crisis that could destroy her family. Kathy peeked through the living room curtains, watching the scene unfold on her front porch with growing dread. She'd been dreading this confrontation for weeks, ever since that day the Historical Society plaque appeared on the old gas lantern by her front door. "I can't believe Karen actually did it," Kathy muttered, shaking her head. Her neighbor had been ranting for days about the eyesore on Kathy's porch, complaining it clashed with the neighborhood's new aesthetic. Kathy had tried reasoning with her, explaining the lantern's significance, but Karen refused to listen. Now, as Kathy saw the curator storming up the steps, his expression livid, she braced herself. This was going to get ugly. The doorbell rang, and Kathy took a deep breath before opening it. The curator stood there, clutching the broken remains of the antique lantern. "Mrs. Henderson, I'm afraid I have some very serious news," he said, his voice tight with barely contained anger. "Your neighbor, Mrs. Simmons, just destroyed a priceless historical artifact that was on loan to our museum. This was an irreplaceable piece, donated to us decades ago by the Harrington family." Kathy's stomach dropped. The Harringtons were one of the founding families of their small town. If she was caught in the middle of this, the consequences could be disastrous. I don't understand," she stammered. "Karen did this." The curator nodded grimly. "She claimed she thought it was just some cheap lawn decoration. But the damage is done. This is a criminal offense, and I'm required to report it to the authorities." Kathy's mind raced. She had to do something to defuse this situation before it spiraled out of control. "Please, can't we work something out?" she pleaded. "Karen made a mistake. She didn't realize the significance of the lantern. I'm sure she's willing to make amends." The curator's expression hardened. "I'm afraid the law is quite clear on this matter. Destroying a historical artifact on loan is considered theft and vandalism. Mrs. Simmons will have to face the consequences." Kathy's heart sank. This was going to be a public relations nightmare for the town. The Harringtons were highly respected, and they would not take this lightly. She had to find a way to make this right before it was too late. "Let me talk to Karen," Kathy said quickly. "Maybe there's something we can do to make this right, to avoid a scandal. Please, give me a chance to fix this." The curator hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "Very well. But time is of the essence. I'll give you 1 hour to sort this out before I'm required to file a formal report." Kathy's mind raced as she hurried next door, praying she could find a way to salvage this disaster before it was too late. Kathy burst through Karen's front door, finding her neighbor pacing the living room in a state of panic. "Karen, we've got a massive problem on our hands," Kathy blurted out. "The curator from the Historical Society is standing on my porch right now, and he's furious about the lantern." Karen's face drained of color. "Oh my God, I didn't know. I thought it was just some old junk. I had no idea it was that important." "Well, it is," Kathy said, her voice tense. "And now he's threatening to file a criminal report against you for destroying a priceless historical artifact. We've got less than an hour to figure out how to fix this before it blows up into a huge scandal." Karen's eyes widened in horror. "A criminal report? But I can't have that on my record. My husband is running for city council, and this would ruin everything." Kathy nodded urgently. "Exactly. That's why we need to come up with a plan. Fast. The curator said he's willing to give us a chance to make this right, but time is running out." Karen began pacing again, her mind racing. Okay. What if we just replace the lantern? Can we find another one like it?" Kathy shook her head. "No, that's not going to work. This was a one-of-a-kind donated item. The curator said it's irreplaceable. Well, then what are we supposed to do? Karen cried in frustration. I can't have this on my record, Kathy. My whole family's future is at stake here. Kathy took a deep breath, trying to remain calm. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go back and stall the curator as long as I can. In the meantime, you need to call your husband and have him use his connections to see if there's any way we can make this disappear quietly. Karen nodded nervously. Okay, I can do that. But what if it doesn't work? Kathy fixed her with a serious stare. Then we're both going to be in a world of trouble. This isn't just about you, Karen. The whole town is going to be dragged into this mess if we can't find a way to make it go away. Without another word, Kathy hurried back to her own house, praying that Karen could pull some strings and make this nightmare vanish before it was too late. Kathy hurried back to her porch, where the curator was pacing impatiently. Well, he demanded, has Mrs. Simmons agreed to take responsibility for her actions? Kathy took a deep breath. She's, very upset about the situation, but she's working on finding a solution. The curator's brow furrowed. A solution? There is no solution to the willful destruction of a historical artifact. The law is quite clear on this matter. I understand that, but please, just give us a little more time, Kathy pleaded. Karen didn't mean to cause any harm. I really believe we can make this right. The curator's jaw tightened. Mrs. Henderson, I'm afraid I simply cannot overlook this. The Harrington family trusted us to protect that lantern, and now it's been destroyed. I have a responsibility to report this to the authorities. Kathy's mind raced. Wait, please. What if Karen agrees to pay for the full value of the lantern? Would that satisfy the Historical Society? The curator considered this for a moment. The lantern was appraised at nearly $25,000. Even if Mrs. Simmons could afford that, it doesn't change the fact that it was a donated, irreplaceable artifact. Kathy's heart sank. $25,000. Oh God. She knew Karen's family didn't have that kind of money. This was spiraling out of control. I'm sorry, Mrs. Henderson, but my hands are tied, the curator said firmly. I have to report this to the police. The Historical Society will have to pursue criminal charges. Kathy felt panic rising in her chest. Please just give me a little more time. I know we can figure something out. The curator shook his head. I'm afraid I've given you more than enough time already. I must insist you inform Mrs. Simmons that I will be filing a report immediately. As the curator turned to leave, Kathy's mind raced. She had to stall him somehow, buy Karen more time to pull off a miracle. But what could she possibly do? Desperate, Kathy blurted out the first thing that came to mind. Wait, what if I agreed to take full responsibility for the lantern? The curator paused, his brow furrowed. Take responsibility? I'm afraid I don't understand, Mrs. Henderson. Kathy swallowed hard, her mind racing. What I mean is, what if I agreed to reimburse the Historical Society for the full value of the lantern? Would that satisfy the legal requirements and keep this out of the courts? The curator studied her for a long moment, clearly weighing the options. That is, an interesting proposal. However, the lantern was technically on loan to you, so the responsibility for its safekeeping falls squarely on your shoulders. Kathy nodded quickly. I understand that, and I'm willing to accept that responsibility, even though my neighbor was the one who actually destroyed it. I can't let this turn into a huge scandal for the town. Please, give me a chance to make this right. The curator's expression softened slightly. I appreciate your willingness to take accountability, Mrs. Henderson, and I do understand the delicate position this has put you in with your neighbor. He paused, then let out a heavy sigh. Very well. I will hold off on filing the police report for now. But I will need the full $25,000 appraisal value of the lantern within 48 hours, or I'll have no choice but to proceed with criminal charges. Kathy felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you, Thank you so much. I promise you'll have the money by the deadline. The curator nodded solemnly. See that I do, Mrs. Henderson. This is a very serious matter, and I hope you understand the gravity of the situation. As the curator turned to leave, Kathy closed the door, her mind racing. How on earth was she going to come up with $25,000 in less than 48 hours? She hurried to the phone, dialing Karen's number with trembling fingers. This was their last chance to fix this before everything came crashing down. Karen, it's me. I stalled the curator, but we've only got 48 hours to come up with $25,000 or he's going to the police. We need to figure this out fast. What are we going to do? Karen's face went pale as Kathy relayed the curator's ultimatum. $25,000? Oh my God, I can't possibly come up with that kind of money in 2 days. Kathy gripped the phone tightly, her mind racing. I know, but we have to figure something out. If this goes to the police, it could ruin everything for your husband's campaign. Karen began pacing, her hands trembling. This is a disaster. My family's political future is on the line, and now we're facing criminal charges. There has to be a way out of this. Kathy chewed her lip anxiously. Well, the curator said he'd be willing to forego the charges if we can pay the full appraised value of the lantern. So we just need to find a way to come up with that money. Fast. Karen let out a frustrated groan. But where are we supposed to get $25,000 on such short notice? We don't have that kind of cash lying around. Kathy paused, an idea slowly forming in her mind. What about your husband's campaign funds? Couldn't he use some of that to cover the cost? Karen's eyes widened. Are you crazy? We can't touch that money. It's all earmarked for the election. If anyone finds out we used it for this, it would be political suicide. Kathy's shoulders slumped. You're right. I'm just grasping at straws here. I don't know what else to do. The two women fell silent, each racking their brains for a solution. Suddenly, Karen's head snapped up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. Wait a minute. What about your parents' estate? Didn't they leave you a bunch of money when they passed away? Kathy felt her heart sink. Karen, you know I can't touch that money. It's set aside for my kids' college funds and my retirement. I can't just empty it out on a whim. Karen's expression turned desperate. But Kathy, this is an emergency. If we don't find a way to pay for that lantern, my whole family is going to be ruined. Surely your parents would understand if you used some of their inheritance to help us out in a crisis like this. Kathy chewed her lip, her mind racing. She knew Karen was right. This was a dire situation. But could she really justify dipping into her family's future to cover for Karen's mistake? As the seconds ticked by, Kathy realized she had no other choice. This was the only way to keep the scandal from destroying Karen's family. With a heavy heart, she made her decision. Okay, Karen. I'll do it. I'll use my parents' money to pay for the lantern. The weight of Kathy's decision hung heavy in the air as she stared at Karen, her heart pounding. This was the only way to save her neighbor's family from the looming scandal, but it would come at a great personal cost. Are you sure about this, Kathy? Karen asked, her voice laced with desperation. I mean, that's a huge amount of money from your parents' estate. Won't that put a huge dent in your kids' college funds? Kathy nodded slowly. I don't have a choice, Karen. If I don't come up with that $25,000, the Historical Society is going to the police, and that would be even worse for your family. Karen's face twisted with guilt. I don't know how I can ever repay you for this. You're risking so much to bail me out of this mess. Kathy let out a weary sigh. It's not about repaying me, Karen. This is about protecting our community and keeping our families from getting dragged through the mud. I just hope I can make it work without completely draining my parents' estate. Karen reached out and squeezed Kathy's hand. You're an amazing friend, you know that. I don't deserve your help after what I've done. Kathy mustered a small smile. Well, we're in this together now. So let's just focus on getting the money to the Historical Society before the deadline. Okay. Karen nodded, her expression resolute. Okay. Let me make some calls, see if I can get the funds wired over as soon as possible. As Karen hurried off to make the necessary arrangements, Kathy sank down onto her couch, running a hand through her hair. This was going to be a massive financial hit for her family, one that would take years to recover from. But she knew she had no other choice. Steeling herself, Kathy headed to her home office, pulling up the account information for her parents' estate. With a deep breath, she began the process of transferring the required funds, praying that this gamble would pay off in the end. The next 48 hours were going to be a nail-biting race against the clock. Kathy could only hope that Karen's political connections would be enough to make this crisis disappear before it was too late. The 48-hour deadline loomed over Kathy like a dark cloud. She had transferred the full $25,000 from her parents' estate, gutting her family's carefully planned financial future, all to save Karen from the consequences of her careless actions. Now, as Kathy paced nervously in her living room, she waited anxiously for any word from the Historical Society. Had Karen's husband's political connections been enough to make this crisis disappear? Just then, the doorbell rang. Kathy's heart leaped into her throat as she rushed to answer it, praying it was the curator with good news. To her relief, it was the curator, his expression unreadable. "Mrs. Henderson, I must commend you on your prompt action. The Historical Society has received the full appraised value of the lantern." Kathy let out a shaky breath. "So, does that mean the matter is resolved? No charges will be filed?" The curator nodded slowly. "Yes, that's correct. The board has agreed to accept your reimbursement and drop any further action. The incident will be kept strictly confidential." Kathy felt a wave of relief wash over her. Thank you so much. I know this was an incredibly serious situation, and I'm grateful you were willing to work with us." The curator offered a somber nod. "Indeed. I must say, I'd admire your willingness to take responsibility for your neighbor's actions. It's a rare display of community spirit these days." Kathy managed a small smile. "Well, Karen is my friend, and this town means a lot to both of us. I just couldn't bear the thought of it being torn apart by a scandal like this." The curator's expression softened slightly. "I understand. In any case, the matter is now resolved. I appreciate your cooperation, Mrs. Henderson. Good day to you." As the curator turned to leave, Kathy closed the door, her legs suddenly feeling weak. She had done it. She had managed to make the crisis disappear, at a tremendous personal cost. Collapsing onto the couch, Kathy buried her face in her hands, finally allowing the tears to flow. Her parents had worked so hard to build that nest egg, and now a large chunk of it was gone, all because of Karen's thoughtless actions. But as the initial wave of grief subsided, Kathy felt a sense of resolve harden within her. This incident had shown her the true depths of her friendship with Karen and the importance of standing by each other in times of crisis. Kathy knew that, no matter the personal sacrifice, she had done the right thing, and she would do it again in a heartbeat, if called upon. For that was the true meaning of community, being there for one another, no matter the cost. In the weeks that followed, Kathy tried to put the incident with the porch lantern behind her. She had dipped into her parents' hard-earned estate to save Karen from financial and legal ruin, and while it had been a painful sacrifice, Kathy knew she had done the right thing. Still, the loss of that money weighed heavily on her mind. Her children's college funds had been drastically reduced, and Kathy wondered how she would make up the difference in the years to come. It was a constant source of worry, but she pushed those thoughts aside, determined to focus on the positive. One morning, as Kathy was checking her mail, she found an envelope addressed to her in an unfamiliar handwriting. Curious, she tore it open and began to read. It was a letter from the Harrington family, the original donors of the antique porch lantern. Kathy's heart raced as she scanned the elegant script, her eyes widening with each passing sentence. The Harringtons had heard about the incident through the local grapevine and were deeply moved by Kathy's selfless actions. They expressed their sincere gratitude for her willingness to take responsibility and ensure the lantern's legacy was preserved. But the real surprise came at the end of the letter. The Harringtons had decided to honor Kathy's sacrifice by making a substantial donation to her children's college funds, more than enough to make up for the money she had used to cover the lantern's value. Kathy couldn't believe it. She had simply done what she felt was right, never expecting any kind of reward or recognition. Yet here were these pillars of the community, offering her family an incredible gift in return. As Kathy sat down, tears of joy and relief streaming down her face, she knew that her sacrifice had been worth it. She had not only saved her friend's family from ruin, but she had also forged an unbreakable bond with the Harringtons, one that would echo through the generations to come. In the end, the broken porch lantern had shattered more than just glass. It had shattered the illusion of petty neighborhood rivalries and self-interest, revealing the true power of community, loyalty, and the enduring strength of true friendship.